I've got this VGC article up about Ubisoft saying that players suing the crew shutdown, or suing Ubisoft being sued over the crew shutdown, shouldn't have expected the game to be owned, or that they shouldn't expect to own it forever, is a really, really terrible statement and a bad look for a number of reasons. So I'm going to look at the online aspect of it, but also the disc-based aspect, because we all know that currently the Ubisoft is being sued over the crew, and Ubisoft saying that you shouldn't own your games forever or shouldn't expect to is a fair statement, because and I say it's fair only because a disc can't last 100 years. Eventually it might break. Who knows, maybe like 80 years down the line, who knows. But ideally, we do want to keep our games by using discs and other pieces of physical media to be able to do that. However, they also did give us a interesting quote that I do not agree with, saying that we should get used to not owning our games, and that's largely a reference to the move of the all digital future, where we just pay for licenses of games through digital storefronts, because let's be real, all digital storefronts suck, and I am just not a fan of it at all. But there's the online aspect to a game. We all know that The Crew was online only before it got shut down. Now it's not accessible or online anymore in any way, shape, or form. But the thing is that modders did manage to find an offline mode in The Crew. And other games like, and I can't believe I'm using these examples, Marvel's Avengers, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, both of these games got offline modes before they stopped being supported. So the fact of the matter is that as long as you're able to download the patch, you can still play those games offline. I wish that when people make games that they put in an offline mode in their 1.0 version, rather than it being a thing that happens later on down the line. I just really don't like that practice at all, and is kind of just very, very annoying to have to deal with over and over again. But it is something that just isn't thought of when people are making games that are very much online only. In fact, from what I recall, a newly announced FromSoft game for the Switch 2 that is an exclusive is an online only game, the Duskbloods or whatever it's called. I can't quite remember. It's just interesting to think that, like, as time goes on, there's still just more and more online only games being made as we speak. But yeah, Ubisoft has again argued that players buying video games shouldn't expect them to be owned forever. This argument stems from Ubisoft's decision to shut down The Crew last year, which I still can't believe that happened last year, and the fact that we're already in April this year is just insane to think about. But after almost a decade of support, so basically what they said in April 2024, or rather, I suppose they said before that, because they shut it down in April of 2024. This is what Ubisoft said. After almost a decade of support, we will be decommissioning The Crew 1 on March 31st, 2024. It said at the time, we understand this may be disappointing for players still enjoying the game, but it is necessary due to upcoming server infrastructure and licensing constraints. Cool. Make an offline mode then. 2 players impacted by the shutdown launched legal action against Ubisoft, accusing Ubisoft of violating California consumer protection laws. At the time, the playtesters claimed that Ubisoft misled players by telling them they were buying a game when in fact they were renting was a limited license to access to a game that defendants choose to maintain at their own noblesse oblige. Wow, that's wording, man. Holy crap. Anyway, the plaintiffs also claimed that the product's packaging falsely represented that The Crew itself was encoded onto physical discs consumers could buy, or the digital files consumers could pay to download, when in fact the physical discs and downloaded files consumers paid for were more akin to a key they could use to open the gates of this remote server, which defendants could one day decide to fail to maintain. Now spotted by Polygon, Ubisoft is attempting to get the lawsuit thrown out, arguing that players should never have expected to own the online-only game indefinitely. One thing worth keeping in mind is that when people say owning the game, they're not saying to own the source code or own the actual IP. It just means that whenever someone wants to be able to play the game, that they're able to do it at their whimsy, given that they've paid the money to purchase the product in question. Normally, a physical copy of the game is the easiest sign of that being used. Anyway, moving on from that, frustrated with Ubisoft's recent decision to retire the game following a notice period on the product's packaging, plaintiffs apply a kitchen sink approach on behalf of a putative class of nationwide customers, alleging 8 causes of action violations of California's False Advertising Law, Unfair Competition Law, and Consumer Legal Remedies Act, as well as common law fraud and breach of warranty claims, Ubisoft lawyers wrote. Ubisoft claims that players should have no expectation that they will purchasing unfettered ownership rights in the game. I feel like that's a really bad idea for Ubisoft, because buying the disc is basically buying an unfettered ownership over a title in a way. Maybe it's not the best way, but it is a way. And so if for whatever reason Ubisoft didn't think that this was particularly important, they wouldn't do what they did here. In response to fan backlash last September, Ubisoft announced plans to launch offline modes for The Crew 2 and The Crew Motorfest, because keeping in mind, both of those games are also online only and do not have offline modes, and yet Ubisoft is happy to launch offline modes for these 2 games despite the fact that they shut down The Crew 1 initially. We want to acknowledge that some of you voiced your concern about access to the Crew games, said Stefan Bailey, Senior Creative Director of the franchise at Ivory Tower. Today we want to express our commitment to the future of The Crew 2 and The Crew Motorfest. We are currently exploring different solutions and can confirm an offline mode to ensure long-term access to both titles, which is actually quite interesting. Oh, okay, this is actually quite interesting. I didn't realize this. So, in an amended complaint from March this year, the plaintiffs from that suit I was talking about earlier claimed that Ubisoft used activation codes for the game with a 2099 expiry, suggesting the game would be around long term. And that Ubisoft further broke California law by allowing gift cards to expire, something that isn't legally allowed to happen in the state. The plaintiffs claim that the Crew's currency system meets the legal requirements to be considered a gift card. Ubisoft has until April 29th to respond. That is fascinating, because keeping in mind, this isn't the only thing that's going on as well. Ross from Accursed Farms is also doing a massive suit, a worldwide effort to try and tackle it, called Stop Killing Games. Let me just bring that up real quick, because I do really like what he's doing here. So yeah, the Stop Killing Games movement started with basically what's happening with what's it called? Basically the Crew being the reason for the Stop Killing Games to exist. So I'll acknowledge that. And so yeah. So there's stuff like currently, it was a worldwide effort. Now it's being focused in certain parts of the world. So there's like the petition to the UK government, which has to pass 100,000 signatures. Contacting. So this is basically the French aspect of it. So tackling the French consumer protections, the UK consumer protections, but also a European initiative which is going on at the moment, which requires around, if I remember correctly, 1 million signatures within a year, but also requiring a certain amount of people from each country. The thing is that if it was worldwide, we would have reached 1 million ages ago, but because it's only the European Union that we're looking at, the amount of people are a lot, shrunk down quite a bit, but still 27,000 current signatures is absolutely insane. And if I was in Europe, I would absolutely be signing up as well. But unfortunately, I'm not among those people, and I do have my copy of The Crew sitting upstairs, not being able to be used. So if you are in Europe, please consider signing this initiative, because You don't actually need to have purchased the game in order to be able to sign this petition. So please, if you can, and especially if you're in countries like Latvia and stuff like that, please just give that a shot. You know, get your name out there. Just, you know, help people out, because while we can't save the crew anymore, this is an idea of being able to save games moving forward. But with all that being said, however, let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 500 subs by the end of the year. With all that being said, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.